Formula 1 is back in a couple of weeks, and it got me thinking, we never saw if there's any changes made to the TV graphics back in Australia because we never got to an FP1 session. So I thought it'd be fun to redesign the Formula 1 tower graphic. So for comparison, let's have a look at a quick screenshot to see what is currently on the Formula 1 tower. So over here, as you can see, you've got the positions on the left-hand side. Next to them, you've got a line going down, which is representing the team colors. Then you've got the abbreviations of the driver names, and then you've got the interval of how far away they are from each other. And then up here, you've got your lap indicator, as well as also your lap numbers. So you can see here, this is the second lap of lap 64. So with my redesign process, it's not to try and reinvent the wheel, it's to try and work off what's already worked very well with them and try to alter some of the design to make it a bit more clear and just to make it a bit more on brand, I would sort of say. Because at the moment, as you can sort of look here, the things that really strike me first is the lap fonts. So everything is in the same sort of font, which is typical Formula 1 regular font. But then up here, you've got this really weird lap wide font, and then you've got this gradient line, and it's just not really on their brand, I would say, which is counterintuitive, I know, because it's Formula 1 who've made this, but it just doesn't really fit in with the rest of the design. Likewise also, you can see at the top here, you've got these curved edges there and down here. But then on the position numbers, it's only on the bottom right. And I think it just needs to be a bit more consistent with everything. You can see here, there's a massive sort of gap between, well, not massive, but like in terms of design, a fair chunk wide gap between the position number, the team color, and then the names and so forth. And it's all well and good, you know, designing something around like Carlos Sainz. So if we just make some rulers here, his name only comes up to this section here, whereas Magnussen, below him, you can see it's much greater. So you've always got to accommodate just in case a name abbreviation is wider. And typically, like, you know, the widest letters you can get out there are like are G's or W's. So it's just having that, that sort of safety net. But even then though, it's just a bit too apart for me, and you can save up a load of space, I think. So that was my first thought going into it. So then let's check out my redesign. But straight away you can see up here, this is my redesign of the lap counter. Get on rid of the wide text just because you don't need it. Likewise also the line underneath, and might be of a small difference as well, but I've sort of carried it along with everything else I've done, is that I've moved the roundness to the top left and to the bottom right. So then it's more on brand for what Formula 1 have been putting on, you know, on their websites or their press releases or anything. You might also be able to see that I've actually changed the background color from black to a very dark blue, and that's more because it's having pure black on screen as a graphic doesn't typically look that nice. Naturally, with those dark colors, it's more to look more futuristic and more polished and such. Whereas if it's more of a dark blue, it's kind of keeping it to a particular brand. If I was to change this to like a dark green, then it might be more on my brand because my branding is all around green. Or if I was to change it to a dark red, it'd be more Ferrari sort of thing. And I think with Formula 1, it's just having pure black doesn't really work. Right then, so let's actually have a look at the tower. You might also notice that some driver names are with some different teams. This is what I've done as a rough prediction of what might be in 2021. So you can see here, like George Russell, he's replaced Bottas at Mercedes, and Bottas is currently at Renault with Ocon. You can see that Nick Latifi is still with Williams, dead last, but Jack Aiken is now the second driver, fingers crossed. Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean still haven't been fired from Haas, so they're dead last because they haven't progressed anything with the team. Stroll and Perez are racing for Aston Martin Racing, so that's why they've now gone for more of a sort of a green team livery look. Ricciardo and Norris still doing very well in the midfield, and Leclerc and Sainz in the top 5. Don't take this seriously, this is me just having a bit of fun. I'm not doing this as like this is definitely confirmed what's going to be happening, but I just wanted to upgrade it a little bit. So let's look into the design of what's been changed. So with the position numbers as well, it's also replicating the background, so it's just more consistent. So you've got the natural curve at the top left here and the curve top right. And this is where it implements also with the team colors. So I thought to have the team colors more connected to the actual position numbers, and it's sort of utilizing that little curve to raise up, so it's not just like a boring straight line. And this little curve here is kind of referencing more of F1's branding, you know, sort of doing a bit more of outliney text. So by budging over the team colors to the left and incorporating it with the position numbers, you do have that small little outline text, so then it's not just the color blending into the white of the position box. You do have that sort of defined outline, sort of black edge, but it's just been shrunken in a little bit more. Now moving further on a little bit into the race is something I would like to see on the interval screen, and that's basically to indicate when someone's more likely to overtake. Now, by this, I do not mean an overtaking predictor or any graphics like that. I think the less graphics on screen, the better, because then you can just absorb more of the racing action. But I think you do still need a little bit of help of when someone is close to going for an overtake. And by that, I mean, when we look over to the interval screen, you can see everyone's distance from each other. However, Verstappen is 0.453 seconds behind George Russell, and Lance Stroll is 0.382 seconds behind Bottas. Now, originally, all of those intervals would just be pure white, and it would have to be your job to try and pick out where the gaps are closing in and who's within a distance of overtaking. And so I've deemed that to be 0.5 seconds away from where some action might happen. And that's typically what, what producers and race directors use when they're cutting the main live TV footage, of where if you see a battle and someone's within a couple tenths or anything, naturally you want to cut to them because you know soon there might be an overtake. And I think a graphic change is something as small as it turning green to visually tell the audience that an overtake is most likely going to happen in a couple corners time would really help the broadcast, and you won't need like a massive overtaking predictor or, all of this other stuff. I think this would be a much simpler approach. Speaking of overtaking, let's see one now of Lance Stroll overtaking Valtteri Bottas. There you go, nice and simple. Basically what happened before is that the green and red would just sort of simply fade on. It's a very subtle difference, but the only thing that would change is that the green, as you can see there, it gets loaded from the bottom. Likewise also with the red gets loaded from the top. And that way, it's rather than it just sort of fading on and just working, it's sort of a psychological thing of that he's progressing up. So green going from top to bottom, red you're going down, so the red comes from down to bottom. It's a very small change, but something which I think would work very well. Now the last thing I redesigned on the tower graphic is when two drivers are battling it out on track. And what they typically do is they reveal the driver faces, and it makes you more concentrated on who the drivers are. And I think with that, you could sort of capitalize on some new features. So let's have a look at my one. So in this example, we're going to be looking at Max Verstappen racing against George Russell. So if we open up here, you've got some live telemetry added into the side of the tower. So we've got here the live speed in kilometers per hour. So yeah, George Russell's going 234, whilst Max is coming in a bit hotter at 244. Next to that, you've got the DRS enabled button, where basically it's normally grayed out unless they've got DRS, then it switches onto white. And then next to that, you've got the more important telemetry of the accelerator and the brake. And here it's really key for the audience to see when someone's braking later into a corner or who's getting onto the power earlier. And having these two right next to each other really helps dictate what their different driving styles are. And I know there's graphics where you've got them on the proper lower third of a full graphic of what tire strategy they're doing, as well as also their speed, as well as also the G-forces and whatnot. Whereas I think you just need a bit more of a simplistic approach, and you can do that from the tower. You can still easily see when someone's braking and going into the power early or not. And I think just implementing that into the tower graphic, I think it worked great. It's not too busy. It's not having to sacrifice losing loads of drivers coming off the screen. We only lose 4 drivers when they scroll down. So you can see at the very bottom here from Nick Latifi going down, and it just shows sort of the top 16. But I mean, you typically only really want to show who's in the top 10 because where the points matter. And I think having a more simplistic approach to it works a lot nicer. But that's it for this graphic video. And if you want me to redesign any other Formula 1 graphics, then let me know in the comments down below. If you want to watch some more videos of mine, you can do so by clicking over there. As a reminder, every Tuesday at 8 PM, I live stream to this YouTube channel. So if you want to be tuned for that, as well as also watch some future videos, make sure to click subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.